Thanks for watching. This is the second or the third, whatever you want to call it, video in my Losi Polarey series. If you're just watching me build this is the second video. If you have seen me unbox it, because the whole idea here is that I'm creating a vehicle that could perhaps come out, that hasn't come out, that I just made with a bunch of parts that I have available to me. And you can do this as well. So what I started out with over here is the Losi Hammer Rey. You will be familiar with these. These come in gray, or gray, I'm not really colorblind. These come in green, they come in red. I had the green one, I really like it. I really like the platform. I do, however, think that there's some room to make some more original builds as well. So that's where this comes in. The Baja Rey series, and then also the Hammer Rey, the Rock Rey, of course, is a very versatile platform, has a ton of possibilities. It has a solid rear axle, independent front suspension, bunch of great parts. It is pretty basic. It is also very durable, but with it being very basic, it's also easy to modify. So that's what I'm doing over here. What did I want to have? I want to have a Polaris RZR or like a Can-Am, but at least I want to have like a side-by-side seater. That's something that, apart from in 24 scale or 18 scale I believe it was, when they modified those Yeti Juniors to look like a Can-Am, I however want to have a Polaris, and that's what I'm building over here. Arrma came out with the FireTeam, really fun truck, cool looking truck as well. I do think that this kind of looks like a Polaris. So in the front you can tell, I think from some of the lines that are going on, that this has potential. That potential quickly fades once you get to the G.I. Joe section, which is these four dudes. Three of them have guns. This is kind of like a hybrid, I guess. Arrma going somewhat into the gaming scene, going into what they think would be cool. I already addressed this in my first video. In Europe, we're not used to having guns and whatnot. And I also think that that's why this platform kind of failed to do what it hopefully would do. But it does offer a great amount of cool parts. The roll cage is fantastic, the body panels are fantastic, and also those figures have a lot of potential. You can tell that they're really broad-shouldered and they look burly and buff, and it comes that's mostly because those heads, they're really small. And if you would address that, like I did that, for example, over here, and you take the guns away, add a few more details, there's so much potential over here. So I hope that you perhaps will also dive into seeing what's possible and creating your own cool stuff. One of the things that's really apparent, I think, immediately is that I dropped two passengers. I did that by hacking out those passengers, but also the seats to make room for those shock towers in the back. I managed to obscure that as well. More about that later. I think at first we're now going to look at those driver figures, or the driver figure and then the passenger. Because what I did over there is I recycled the helmets that you would find inside of the Hammer Rey. The Hammer Rey is like 7th scale, and you can tell that I decapitated Casey Curry and his friend, or a co-driver, to put their heads inside of my Losi Polarey. Again, hopefully a lot of people are being tricked and are contacting Horizon, going like, hey, where can I buy that? Well, you know, you can't, but you can use all these Horizon products to build your own. So have fun with that. Those heads, they fit really easy. I gave everything a coat of paint, so also those arms. This is all stuff that you could find with the FireTeam parts list. One thing that I did not like, or another thing that I did not like, was the Knight Rider steering wheel. So it has like a steering wheel without like the top, so just like two, I don't know, a bit lame, just those two sides. If you just use a piece of wire, of course I can't find that, oh here it is, a piece of wire, some shrink tubing, you can bend this and you can put the shrink tubing over the two knobs of steering wheel that are visible, and thus completing it, making it look somewhat like a full steering wheel. So that's what I did over here to fix that. Another thing I did was I added some of the dials that you would find on Yeti XL. So I had a sticker sheet available. You can, of course, you can use anything. Cut away all of the FireTeam logos and all of the Arrma logos, just not immediately give away what this is, and hopefully I succeeded in that, because I'm having so much fun in building this in anticipation of at some point revealing it and having people go like, hey, what is that? Where did you get that? So that's the whole joke here. It's a very extensive and elaborate prank that I hope will work out, but we'll see. Most likely once this video is launched, I will already know if it's kind of worked or not. I decided to have a dark blue metallic color over here. So I painted some of this stuff up, which is going to be a continuation of what I want to do on the front clip. So this hood is going to be dark blue metallic, and then to kind of have a different shape, or at least make this look more coherent and make this look visually larger than it actually is. I have that dark blue then continuing somewhat into that interior panel. Another trick that I did is you can tell that there's a big chunk of kind of flat material going on over here in the side of that interior panel. I painted that light blue, and I did that because I want some of that to be visible through the door section. So I addressed this in the first video. I'll make sure that that's linked over here or in the video description box. I will also make sure that this video is part of a playlist, so you can check out the full series on me building a Losi Polarey using an Arrma FireTeam cage, body panels, and a Losi Hammer Rey. Anyway, if you put the door over here, this is something that I machined on my CNC machine, then I hope you will be able to see through some of those machined holes, not just some of those reinforcement bars of the roll cage, but also some of that light blue material. So that just adds, I think, a nice bit of detail. Then moving on to the back, you see those two Delrin brackets that I machined to marry that FireTeam roll cage to the shock towers of the Hammer Rey. I also machined some bottom plates to be able to join the FireTeam cage and the Hammer Rey chassis together. But especially this part over here, this is paramount in having enough rigidity in this entire setup for it not to buckle like a pretzel. So this is really something that you also want to do. You want to join this together with that shock tower. I also chopped out the complete rear seat. At first I kind of saved that. If you do want to go chopping and hacking stuff out, have 5 close looks at it before you actually make a decision, because you cannot unchop it once you have cut it out. So really go over it a few times to see if it's actually something that you want to do, because you can't add that material back. In this case, this works perfectly fine. I still need to fix my ESC. So this is the 130 amp ESC. This one is capable of 4S, and I will be putting this on top of that FireTeam interior panel. I managed to route the motor wires underneath that interior panel, so kind of looping it back alongside of that shock tower on the right side of the vehicle. I think this looks pretty okay. The on-off switch sits in the stock position, and then if we move back, you will see that there's a radiator right now. This radiator is a direct transplant. So I transplanted the heads, I also transplanted this radiator. You just take this out of the Losi Hammer Rey, so it usually sits over here, and you use the same hardware to mount it in the bottom of the roof section of the FireTeam cage. It is literally made for it. It's a super perfect fit. Also allows me, of course, to use another imaginary licensing partner. So right now I have Baja Designs for the lighting, which we will get into. I have then a Griffin radiator. So this is again another imaginary licensed part. I have those Sparco belts. Yeah, just some cool stuff going on, hopefully to make you think that this could actually be, of course, then Polaris. So yeah, all fun stuff. If we move further to the back, there's another part that I transplanted from the Hammer Rey. and that is this MagnaFlow tailpipe. This usually sits on the top over here. I found that if you take the screws out, so it's minimum amount of hardware, only 3 screws, take that out, you can actually fit it underneath that FireTeam cage. There's one pretty funky panel over there, which is this one, sits behind the roll cage in the back. Now you can also tell that there's a lot more body work going on in a stock FireTeam. So I chopped off this entire section over here just because I think what's going on over here looks a tiny bit like a Mustang, like a Ford Mustang. And I just think that it doesn't fit the truck and it looks ugly. I also found that if you cut this away, you will end up having a really nice extra Lexan section that continues from these rear panels over here. You can turn it into something that I think looks pretty much like a Polaris RZR taillight. So this is what I did to mine. So it sits underneath of this top panel. I hope that makes sense. So you just cut away some of this, and then you will find that underneath you have this. With that, I also wanted to have some functioning tail lights as well, so I glued some red LEDs underneath the cage over here that will illuminate once I'm running the truck, which I think is pretty cool. You can also tell that I cut away a ton of stuff over here just to have enough clearance for the rear suspension. Again, this is pretty simple, just a straight cut rather than having all this bulk hanging off. And I also cut 2 loops off the cage just to have enough room in the back over there. This part that is obscured by that top panel and is kind of invisible in this being also camo. This allows you to mount that MagnaFlow exhaust system. If you look, you see that there's 2 holes in the sides over here. Now those 2 holes, those are punched over there to make sure that you can mount this to the cage. And I found that if you ream them slightly bigger, or actually a lot bigger, you will have enough room to fit the back boxes of that MagnaFlow exhaust through. You will also see that there's a clip over here that fits over the shock tower of your Arrma FireTeam if you have the regular Arrma product. And if you cut away 2 tiny notches on the sides over here, that MagnaFlow exhaust just fits over it really nicely. And you will also see that there's a screw hole over here in the center, which you can then thread your hardware through to keep everything in place and actually mount it. So that's also something that I did, and well, I think that, especially now that I've painted a logo on there as well, it looks like it could be factory. So these are all some of the things that I needed to do in order to complete this, or to actually detail it up enough to the point where I can look at this with great pride and be content with what I have created so far. Another thing is the full light kit. So nothing, I have to say, there's nothing that you would find on the Hammer Rey got harmed or chopped or modified in any way. You can take all of the stuff off from this Losi Polarey, put it back on the Hammer Rey and have the original truck again if you, I don't know, if you regret your decision in modifying it. But you can just take all of this stuff off. So the headlights, the big light bar, and then also use the light bar that sits in the front bumper. And you can kind of upcycle that in using it with your Polarey build. So that's also what I did over here. So the front light bar sits perfectly in between of those 2 cage sections over here. You need to drill a little hole on the side in order to mount it. I also used the mounting clips that they used to hold the wiring down inside of the Hammer Rey. I used those in the back over here in this roll bar section, just to keep the wire sitting where it is supposed to sit. And then in the front you will see that for those front LEDs I had to drill 2 little holes in order to mount them with a zip tie. So this is just something that you drill a 2.5mm hole in the circuit board. Don't be scared, because there's really nothing important going on inside of it, and then you can just zip tie it to the cage and it will be kind of positioned well enough in order for it to function, I hope. I had to resolder my front light bar because I nuked it in an accident that I had with my Hammer Rey. But all in all, it's coming together, I think, rather nicely. In the last video, I still had some 2.2 sized wheels and tires on here. I had some Spec RC wheels. Those are really nice, but I don't want to immediately give away that this is what it is. So in order to kind of throw you off, I put some 1.9s on here. These are really tall 1.9s. So these are impulse beadlock wheels from a Proline with some 1.9 sized, but really tall, what are these again? Super Swampers. In Turco Super Swampers, just to have, I think, the correct look and also proportionately for it to look as well as I can make it look. Another part that I upcycled from the Hammer Rey is the spare tire carrier. Not sure if I can find it. Yes, it's over here. So this as well can be mounted to the back, and you will be able to run a spare tire on top of that, which is also what I'm going to do, since I have 5 of those Spec RC rims to replace the wheels that originally came on the Hammer Rey. So I'll be running a spare tire on top over here, and then those 2.2 sized Baja Pro X tires. But for now, I'm going to keep it like this with the Super Swampers and those impulse wheels. Some of the stuff that I still have to do right now, I have to paint these inner fenders. I have to paint 2 doors on each side. I have to paint the front clip and then the roof panel, put everything back together, and then I guess it is done. I hope that I will be able to explain clear enough what I'm doing over here. This is a really big project, so there's a lot of think work that goes into this. There's a lot of, what did I call it again, procrastinating. Again, you know, I'm Dutch, so forgive me if I got that wrong. So there's a lot of me just standing around looking at it, thinking, how can I solve that? How can I do it better? Tons of improv engineering, and just overall, I think so much fun in creating something that I've always wanted to have. I did that with the SCX6 Gladiator, did that with the Shorty. I did it back in the day with my Yeti XXL, and this again is a project that is getting me so incredibly giddy and so incredibly enthusiastic about creating something that nobody else has yet. So hopefully you will follow along and also make something that is just fun and different and creative and that looks cool and that you cooked up, because there's no better feeling than that, I think, in this hobby, especially if it all works and it all functions the way that you hope it would. Seeing that I plugged the battery in and seeing all the lights come on for the first time, and seeing that if you kind of look at it and you think, yeah, you know, this is something that could actually come out like a Losi Polarey, a Polaris RZR in 7 scale. So yeah, I hope you share my enthusiasm. Let me know in the comment section if you do. If you want to see more builds like these, also let me know. Feel free to subscribe, it is free as well, and also feel free to let me know you perhaps enjoyed this content by hitting the like button. That also greatly helps. Next video you will see me paint up the last couple of body sections and bolt everything together, and hopefully end up with a product that I'm really, well, I am already really proud of it, but something that really throws you off in thinking that this is something that they have released, because Horizon has such a nice pool of products and such a nice amount of usable stuff that you will be able to create something like this in your own shed. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.
Back on.